right. Hello, everyone listening, and hi, guys.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so today's episode is going to be a very good one. I'm excited for this because it's not just one guest. I have 5 others joining me, and this is more of like a panel discussion, and it's just going to be a ton of fun, and you're going to get a ton of different perspectives. And before we get into any of that, I'm going to have each of the moms that are here joining me introduce themselves, and I'll call off as I see them over here. So Britt, you go first.
Like school.
Yeah.
Do you have a series of questions you want answered? Like
No, just whatever you want to say. Whatever you want to say.
Okay. Hi guys. I'm Britt. I'm Britt Hanlon on Instagram. I am a mom of 2 boys, 2 and 4 years old. And so my space on Instagram is really just sharing my tagline is like the good and the wild of boy mom life.
I love it. I love it. Katie.
I'm Katie. I'm a Gemini vegetarian. I like long walks on the beach. No, I'm just kidding. My name's Katie. I'm a mom of 3. I have our oldest is a boy. Our younger 2 are girls. They are 5, almost 4, and 1. And so to say my hands are full is putting it mildly. And I share all about mom life on my Instagram page as well. The ups, the downs, and everything in between, because I think if you neglect the highs or the lows, you're sort of lying to yourself because it's all there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Awesome. Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily, or Take a Minute Mama on Instagram. I have 2 girls that are 4 and 2, Penny and Maddie, and very similar to Katie, I just share the real life, the hard shit, the good shit, all of it in between, and mainly focusing lately on mental health and just how important that is for moms.
Love it. Jordan.
Hi, I'm Jordan. I'm a mom of 3, and I am also, just like all of us, just sharing all the highs and lows of motherhood, just trying to keep it honest, keep it real, keep it open. There's no shame in anything when it comes to motherhood. We all experience it, and I just always want to make sure that I'm just very transparent and telling it like it is. Sometimes that's really awesome, and then sometimes it's not so great. We have to admit that. But I have 3 girls. They are basically, I have 3 kids, 3 and under. So we got a lot going on over here as well.
I didn't realize they were all 3 and under, Jordan.
Yes. I'm about to be 4 and under. Charlie's about to turn 4 next month. But yeah, 3, 2, and 7 months. So yeah.
Wow. And then Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm a mom of 4 boys, ages 13, 6, just turned 3 and 1. And my Instagram handle is boho boy mama. And I'm kind of sarcastic. I just share the boy life, and I perv on my partner all the time, and he lets me do it on social media. He's like, "Why did you do that?" I was like, "Just perfect. Let's do this."
I love it. So I thought of this, and I really was looking forward to just having you guys come on, because obviously like the mental health space on Instagram has definitely taken a uptick lately, and just getting coverage on that. And then also just the postpartum care. And I think we are all familiar with the case lately that happened out of Massachusetts with the mom, and it really just has sparked that conversation, and everyone's aware of all of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And if you're listening, I'm sure you are as well, because I've covered it before. I actually just recently recorded an episode with a therapist this morning who's like big. Emily, she was actually in the article that
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I know. I messaged her and was like, "You read the article with me."
Yeah. So it's a big discussion, and I don't want to let it just die off, because that's what happens with these big things, these big events that happen, and these terrible tragedies that we should be freaking learning from, and it just doesn't happen. And we kind of ride the wave of talking about it, and then it just slowly dies off. And I'm tired of that. And I think we're all right here doing a really great job with our audiences of just being able to tackle the really hard conversations that all of us are feeling, and just sometimes too afraid to say. And I think that's why I wanted to get a multitude of voices here to kind of share those experiences, because it's nice to hear one person talking about it, but it's even more powerful to hear, we have 6.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We have 6
Right.
right here, plus so many more that I'm sure I could have asked to join in, and
Right.
it could just keep on going.
Mhm.
Yeah. I feel like the 6 of us are like tip of the iceberg.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. So in talking about that, so we all have kids of different ages, but they're all pretty young, and we've all gone through all of that. So in terms of, like, let's just talk about like postpartum support and everything. Do you guys feel like you were adequately supported postpartum from your providers? Let's start there. Providers.
No.
Shaking their head. I'm going to have
No.
to record. Okay. And this obviously, I'm hoping everyone listens. Go check this out on YouTube if you're just listening to this. That way you can watch everyone. But everyone's shaking their head. Well, and that's like
Yeah.
the biggest thing is like the postpartum check is the 6 week, it's the 6 week mark. You go there, you get told about your birth control methods.
Oh yeah, what birth control would you like? Yeah, that's all they care about.
Yeah, that's
That's
all
all,
you.
at least for me, when I've gone in, that's like literally one of the first things that they ask.
Oh, well, they
Yeah.
asked me that. I went in for my annual and they just asked me that. And I'm at a year. I'm almost at a year of postpartum and no questions, nothing, just what birth control are you doing? And that in itself kind of offended me. And I love my practice too, but it was a new person that I met with. And I was so like annoyed because I was like, no.
With
It's like you're a grown-ass woman. You need birth control if you want to do it. Like you can figure that out.
Well,
it's
more
like,
the
okay, have you gotten your birth control?
Well, it's more the taboo like nature. So Kevin and I use condoms, TMI, we use condoms because I don't want hormonal birth control. I just don't.
Amen, sister.
I personally just don't want it. And I do not trust the pull-out method. I'm fertile. I'm a fertile myrtle. So I just don't want to test the waters on that. When we've wanted a baby, we've made a baby happen. And that essentially was us removing something and bing, bang, boom, Haley came. We're very blessed in that that's possible. But I
Yes.
told the doctor that, and she was like, oh, do you need an STD screening? And I was like, ma'am. I was like, no. I was like so offended by that. I was like, that's not
Married
why.
people can't use condoms.
What do you think to ask
without it being like
I was like, no. I was like, I guess you don't hear about it often. I mean, I know it's rare. Like not a lot of people admit to it, but I'm like, I mean, it exists for a reason.
Right.
Like, I don't know
because
what
you're
else to
married
say.
doesn't mean you can't.
No, I mean, there's more. I'm taking extra precautions here, people, until I can make a final decision as to what we're doing with babies. Then we're.
Well, what's funny for me is
Repping
when
it.
I went in with our last I forget all their names, to be quite honest. The third one, I was calling the third one. My provider was like, all right, well, while we're in there, do you want me to tie your tubes? I was like, what? I was like, absolutely not. I'm all, he can do it. It's his turn, And then again, when I had the last one, she's like, I'm in there. And I'm like, no, we're good. She's like, what are you doing for protection? I was like, pull out. I'm like, you'd have to have sex in order to use protection. So we're good.
We're good. That's what
I don't know.
said.
I don't know if so with our provider, I don't feel like I can say that I felt adequately supported, but I will say I think that all 3 of ours, when we would go in for, I would say up until the kids each turned a year old, at each of our little well child checks, I would fill out a questionnaire for me. So like it was almost like our kids' pediatrician was checking on me, but not a mental health
I had
person. It was just a pediatrician, which I guess is good that I mean, I suppose if I was answering questions that were like red flags, they would hopefully find me support, but I don't
Except
think
I was never honest on those. So
right. Yeah. I mean, you do have to be honest with yourself. And I mean, I wish that there was more, I don't know, like in a perfect world, what I would wish that there was for moms, because I think everybody needs something different. Some people feel comfortable talking to their provider one-on-one. Some moms might feel more supported in a like a support group, a new mom support group. And honestly, no matter how many kids you have, each time you have a kid, you're a new mom, and it's like it's a whole new situation. And so I don't know really what the right answer is in terms of finding the best support for moms, but I think in general, something more needs to be done, because the case in Massachusetts is not the only one.
Mm.
I mean, this kind of thing happens more frequently than I think we're willing to even admit.
No, well, and that's
Right.
that's what made it so unique. And I was talking to the therapist that I had on as a guest this morning, and she really, obviously she was brought into Good Morning America to talk about it because she took a big stance on it. And a lot of people after the arraignment of this case were like, are you embarrassed now? And she's like, absolutely not, because we don't know anything after the arraignment. We don't know shit. And
I got some messages about that when I shared about it, and they were like, well, it's not what you think. And I said, you know what? There has not been a trial. There has not been anything done. And at the end of the day, if all it did was bring to light mental health and helping more moms, then I would not be ashamed for anything that I've done. Anything that I've said.
No, well, and the big thing too, with what stuck out to me, and I remember when I shared it on Instagram when it was first brought to me, because someone had messaged me and asked me to share the helpline, and I had no idea because it wasn't national news yet at this point.
That's what's crazy. I still have yet to really see much.
No, there's not. No, like even my husband, my family doesn't know anything about it, and I'm like, whatever. But what was so interesting when it first came out was you saw the different sides of it, where it was like men or people without kids saying like cold-blooded monster, how could she, blah, blah. You saw all the moms in the comments that were like, this poor mom and kids.
Right.
Yes.
And that's what makes moms afraid to speak up though.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because like when I went through stuff, I was so afraid to ever say anything because of that people were going to be like, oh, you're crazy, take your baby, you're crazy, put you away. Like you're afraid to speak up because people have that kind of response.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's still like a stigma around it. There's still like so much that's not understood. I think for me, oh my God, I should have gotten my Kleenex for this, Mary. You didn't warn me. You did not warn me that my hormones were going to be going crazy during this talk. But I think for moms, like so many of us, I think the easy reaction is to be angry about it.
Yeah.
But I think so many moms, we heard about it and our hearts broke because it was so sad. I felt sad for her and I felt sad for her family and for her community.
Yep.
I'm not angry about it because it's just, to me, it's a missed opportunity that she should have and could have been more supported. And this whole thing could have potentially been avoided. And I think so much of the general public wants to like just jump to anger. And certainly there's a part of me that's angry, but I'm not angry at her. Like there's nothing wrong with her. I think she snapped. And so many of us snap on a much smaller scale. But to me, like before I became a mom, I thought in my mind, I was like, I don't understand how something like that can happen. Yes. But once you become a mom, you know what it feels like to do these little snaps where you're like, oh my God, like I can tell, like if I was even more on edge, I can tell like how easily you can get to that breaking point. And it doesn't take much. It does not take much with everything else that you have going on in your mind with the hormones and emotions and everything. It doesn't take much to kind of like tip you over the edge.
No, well, even yesterday morning, I was in the kitchen because Kev was away for a full week and we were in the kitchen and I just lost my ever loving shit out of nowhere. And we're in the kitchen and he like stopped and I was like, and I just kept pacing back and forth. I didn't do anything, but I slammed my hands down. And
oh my gosh.
He was like, cause he didn't tell me about something. He like told me, forgot about a date. And that was like, it was like the breaking point for me. Cause I was like, I'm here, that I'm doing everything and I'm proud to do it, but I'm tired. And I just like felt so worn down and it exploded, but to a point where like, I could almost like watch myself doing it where I knew that it was like out of my hands. Like it's like out of body a little bit where you're just like,
you're like,
control it.
Yeah. You're just, and it's just like stuff are coming out of your mouth and you like somewhere in your head, your subconscious is like watching it. You're like, what the hell is going on? But, and it's, if you don't have a space to do that, it comes out in the worst ways, but it's just, I mean, I've talked about mom rage before. I had a window stare at me for 8 weeks because it couldn't get broken or it got broken and I couldn't fix it right away. But it makes you angry. I mean, the whole thing makes you angry about what happened because it's just.
I also think too, like even like, I don't know who had said, Katie, you had mentioned about how like every time you've had a kid, you become a new mom. You really do. And I think when I like we've been saying, this is not a new story. These things unfortunately happen and have happened. And unfortunately, I'm sure it won't be the last one. And it's terrible. But, you know, if I'm being completely blunt, with my first, like I didn't really experience a ton of postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, postpartum rage, like all these things that I am very much experiencing now. I didn't really experience it. And so if I were to hear a story like this, I probably would be some of those comments of like, how could she ever? Like, that is absolutely awful. And she's a monster. And, you know, what all these things that we see people saying that I feel like now that I have walked, obviously I have not personally walked through supposedly what she had gone through, which was postpartum psychosis. I have never experienced that, but I have experienced a lot more mental health things with this postpartum. And I think unless you yourself have experienced to some degree something postpartum related and mental health, you don't understand. And that's what I think is what we're lacking in society, is that understanding of what this actually means.
Education of that. Yeah.
The education of it. Like, there are literally physical things going on inside of that woman that she does not have control over, and that you don't understand. So yeah, you don't understand. How could you ever do something like that? Because you've never been in that place before.
Right.
And thank God that you haven't. Like,
well, and
the married, like what you had said when you got that comment about, oh, my wife has never done that. I got a comment on something similar, and it was like, that could never happen to me because I'm stable. And I said, I'm so glad that you're so stable. Like I wish it on no one to experience mental health, you know?
Yeah. No, well, and that's the thing. Everyone looks at this and they're like, you know, my wife would never, I would never, I would do it. Like, that's awesome. I'm so glad that you have had access to everything that has been able to allow you to feel that way, but not everyone does. And that's why I think this, you know, this case hit, and it's terrible because there was another case of a Black mother who did very similar, I think back in October, or it may have been last year. And a lot of people were like, why wasn't this covered? And I was like, well, it should have been. It should have received the same coverage. That you can look at media for the blame on that one. But also I think it pointed out something where it was like, it's a white middle-class mother who essentially had it all, and she lost her shit. And that right there, I think, is a big marker, because privilege aside, all of that stuff aside, she still got hit with it.
Well, here's what I would argue too. I think these people who are commenting, like the comment that came to you, Mary, of like, my wife could never.
Yeah.
I hope that he's right. I hope that that his wife really, it does feel mentally stable. But here's the thing. I think that there are some women who are able to like hide it better, and they are able to cover it, and they seem like they're handling it pretty well to everybody around them. But inside they feel like they're hanging by a thread. And so I hope that he's right and that she would never, but right. Like, how many of us, like, everybody comes over and they're like, oh, you're doing so great. And I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm drowning. Is it just me?
It's like, you have no idea what's going on inside my mind. I think I'm crazy, but yes, I have a smiling face. I'm great.
Well, that's even with like social media. Cause I know I have that. I recorded a story on a few days ago. I recorded a story cause I was starting off in the morning, and I have it in my drafts cause I never shared it. And I just started talking and I started crying, and I was like, I'm not going to post it. Cause then people are like cringy. And I'm like, I'm going to put on slap on some makeup. And and then I didn't get on for a while the rest of the day, because I was like, I don't know how to get on right now. Cause I'm very honest, but I'm like, I don't want to get on, and it's uncomfortable when you get on and too much. Yeah. Cause you're like, I don't want to tell people that I'm struggling, because then you're constantly getting messages being like, hang in there. And like it's a weird feeling. Like you are, but you also don't want the attention of it, where you're like, okay, I just want to be able to say it, but then not hear anything about it afterwards, type of thing.
Right.
So, but if you say that, it still doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
It's hard.
And then you get afraid that it's going to get held against you. And that's a big thing too. It's like, I don't know. I don't know. That's the fear. It's like, it's a fear of being held against you for some reason.
Well, I'm sure you all experience it too, but it seems like, I mean, I'm so guilty of it. I was the first one to cry today. Shocker. Anybody who knows me or has been following me for a while probably knew that was going to happen. But I've had those days where I show up in stories and all of a sudden I'm crying over something. And I'm like, oh my God, like I was coming on here to just talk about it's been chaos lately. And all of a sudden I'm in tears, but it's shocking to me when I do have those moments and I do press the share to stories button, which sometimes takes a little bit of a kick in the pants to do. But when I do, it's always shocking to me how many moms I hear from. It'll be in the dozens, if not hundreds of moms that are like, I've been feeling the same way. And I feel like I'm the only one. And I feel like when I log on to social media, everybody looks like they have their shit together. And I'm the only one who feels like I'm drowning. And so for the average mom in the middle of the country, who's, the average Jane is I think it's comforting for them to see people that are struggling. It makes them feel like, okay, maybe there's nothing wrong with me. It's just that this is how it is. And it always surprises me how many moms I hear from in those moments of, I'm struggling too, and whatever scenario I'm describing, they're like, this sounds like my life to a T.
Yeah.
I had,
but then
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was going to say,
okay.
Go ahead. You go.
Mary.
No, you go.
I was just going to say that, but then you get those creators out there, and I don't want to like shame anybody, but the ones who shame like the honest moms who it's like, how dare you like complain about your kids and this and that. And then like these people who might really be struggling are seeing those moms saying that, where it's like, oh, everything needs to be perfect. And like, how dare these other people talk about how things are hard. And then they stuck like in this, like, which should I feel? What is okay? And it's like, I just wish that more people were like, it's not that you hate your kids or you hate motherhood, but like, what's the problem with being honest? Because nobody's day is perfect. I'm sorry.
I'm kind of wondering if you're thinking of the same creator that recently, or that did something a little while ago, but I'm not going to say her name, but I feel like there was one.
Can we stay on after this?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Because there was one, there was one that really rattled a lot of, and she's big. She's like in the 200, 250 or beyond. And she did one, and she did a reel where she basically was doing reasons as to why you need to stop complaining about, or how she doesn't relate to moms who complain about motherhood. And it was all different reasons about, like she wanted these kids. Like, why would I act like this is a nightmare when this is a blessing? Like, it was like reasons, which I get, like, trust me, I get it. But also like there needs to be room. And one thing I actually asked the guest this morning when I was talking, cause I had another friend of mine that I met on social media. She was so upset because she was in a group of girls, and one girl that she's been friendly with, and I actually know her cause it's in New Jersey and she lives a little bit south of me. She had said that this friend just basically brought her out to lunch and said, I don't want to be friends anymore because you're too negative. And she said, I get encouraged to share, the hardships. And she said, I'm struggling. She said, I'm struggling. And I got basically told that I'm too negative. And I said, where's the fine line between share your truth, but protect your peace? Because that's also something we're always preaching to people is protect your peace. But then also share your hardships. Like there's a fine line, and it's hard to figure out. And it was good chat this morning. The therapist just said you have to find your people, because you'll realize who it is, because those who stray away from the hard conversations aren't your safe spot.
Right.
And that's the big thing that you have to do, especially if you're listening and you're here on social media. Find your safe spots. Find your safe accounts that you can follow, and the ones that skirt past all that stuff probably aren't it.
Nope.
It's different than being positive versus saying like they should not be saying these things. You should not complain. Like there's a difference there.
Yeah.
I feel like is just targeting.
I always say that like the two are not mutually exclusive. You just because you acknowledge that it's really hard and you're struggling and you're having a bad day or a bad week or a bad month or whatever it is, does not mean that you don't love your kids and you still want them around. You just, the two, they go hand in hand. The same could be said about like something as generic as buying a house. you want to live in a house, you want to own your own house,
But
but
the
then you have
upkeep.
all the right, exactly. So all of
Mhm.
that goes along. So like you can't complain about like, oh, we had a leak and now we have to fix it. Oh,
Mhm.
well, do you don't want your house? It's just
Yeah,
for some
exactly.
reason motherhood holds this separate like expectation that we have to always acknowledge that our children are the light of our lives, and they
Mhm.
are, but at the same time they're little a-holes sometimes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We need them on the
I
other
think it's
side of
the
the locked
only
door.
Yeah.
Well, it's like the only job where you can't complain about it. Any other
Mhm.
job, you could sit down and BS about it and complain and it'd be fine. But when you sit down and if you're complaining about motherhood, you don't love your kids, you're not a good
Yeah.
mom,
Yeah.
aren't you thankful for them? All,
Right.
Well,
all of
and
those
it's,
things.
I always get tripped up by that because I'm like, do we not realize that motherhood is the hardest? Literally, if you really think about what motherhood is, and I've said this before, you are quite literally birthing a human being. It's not like I just sneezed and had a child that's like
Yeah.
cute and smiling. Like I'm creating something that will one day, hopefully, God willing, live way past my time. Like I will be gone and they will keep going and they will keep creating more and more of a legacy. And you could say that, but like change, like that's a
Right.
big thing. Like you
Right.
want to think of all important people in the world. They were born, they were
Yeah.
born and they were raised. That's
have a
not
mom.
something
Mhm.
that's not something subtle. It's not something
Mhm.
minor where
Oh,
it should be hard. Like I would be concerned if it wasn't.
Right. Well, and not
Mhm.
to
Right.
discount any of the great dads out there, because there are some great fathers and great husbands and great partners out there, but motherhood is just different. There's a whole
Mhm.
separate, unless you're talking about somebody who had a surrogate or something like that. I think motherhood still has its own sort of difficulties that are different than fatherhood and parenthood in general, that for moms, like for me at least, like I spent 9 months carrying our children and then another year breastfeeding them. And there's just this whole like physical component that goes into it.
Mhm.
There's an emotional component that goes into it. And even moms who say did not carry their children, they had a surrogate. I think that there's still a different emotional component that makes it really hard. And I've talked to enough dads and connected with dads online that I think that just the way that we connect to our kids is different. Neither one is better than the other, but we just connect to them differently. And motherhood is its own like beast.
Yeah.
Well, it's because they want you. This is what I'm dealing with right now with all of my kids, minus the 13-year-old, because he doesn't need me right now, right? He's just like annoying. But everyone is like, mom, mom, mom. And my story is my partner and I don't have grandparents. So it's literally just him and I dealing with 4 kids.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the struggle is so hard. And there's these like waves of like up and down. And he's amazing, so supportive, helps out all the time. But everyone is just like, mom. And I'm like, Dad's right there. He's literally right next to me,
Mhm.
you know? And I'm like, you guys, Daddy's right there. And he's like, what do you guys want? It's so hard to be a mom because it's, even if you have the most supportive partner, which I feel like I do, it's still so difficult because you're the go-to mom. Mom
Right.
can fix anything and
Mhm.
everything,
Mom can do it all.
Yeah.
and
You're the primary parent.
it adds another like mental like component
Load.
to it,
Yeah.
right? And you guys had talked, I
Not
think
to
it
mention all the
was
mental things you have to remember, like
right,
clothing sizes,
right.
doctor's appointments,
It's
like
Right.
that's all falls on you.
yeah, who does all the scheduling and then and this, it's
Mhm.
like it's so crazy. So, and Brittany, you had said it, and I think it was Jordan, with each child, every birth is so different, but so is the mental health component. So by
Yeah.
postpartum, for me, I lost my mom when I was 4 months pregnant with my first. And
Sorry.
I wasn't sure if it was postpartum because I was like, I had to deal with a loss. And then here's this baby,
Yeah.
all of a sudden. And then my marriage was falling apart. And so that there was that. But then with the other, like with Levi, I did have it severely. With Atlas, not so much. With Zane, I did have it. And it's just, and I didn't have the support. The only support I really had was my partner and being open with him and with my physician or even the pediatrician. The pediatrician, I actually liked it because he's a dude and he's super rad.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, how are you doing? Can you? And he was so
Aw.
supportive. He's like, what are you doing? What do you need? He's like, I'm like, nothing, I'm fine. Like, he's like, okay, are you
Mhm.
sure? Like, and I'm like, yes, you know, and it's
Yeah.
that whole mom thing. I mean, I love it. Obviously, I have 4 of them, but
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
ready.
Yeah.
Can we all go out and do something?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
No one need me. Then I feel guilty when I leave. So
Yeah,
Right.
the mom
Well,
guilt-
and
the mom
then they're
guilt gets you.
perfectly
Mhm.
behaved for the dad. Like I was just talking about this on my stories
yes,
yesterday. Like I went away for a few hours and I come back and it's like they were perfect. He went and took his nap. Like my littlest is fighting naps every single day for me. And it's like, oh, he just went right away and they didn't fight all day. And it's like the moment I get home, they start screaming at each other. They're punching each other.
Yes.
And it's like I had that extra mental load of then having to deal with like being the referee and like literally my husband's always like, you talk so much because I'm literally just talking all day. Being like, stop
Yeah.
doing this, stop doing that. And it's like he doesn't have to deal with that for some reason with mom. It's like, let's go
Well, and
crazy.
I will
That's
say one
sensory
thing my
literally
partner
overload.
living the
says.
same life.
One thing my partner does say is like, wow, the minute mom comes in, everyone starts freaking out. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Yep.
this does not,
And
those
this just
words don't
immediately
help
What
me.
is
goes it's
that?
like, oh, that was a nice break, but jump right back in and it's crazy
Yep.
town.
Yeah. I'll literally I'll like stand outside of our garage, the door from the garage to the house. And I'm like listening and I'm like, wow, it sounds really calm in there. I just came home
Mhm.
from the grocery store today and I did that. And I was like, okay, it sounds like I'm not coming home to chaos. Otherwise I'm going to get back in the car and I'm going to go find something else that I need to do.
Or just run.
Yeah. Just like dart down the street. But seriously, the second I come in, it's like, everybody goes
Yeah.
crazy. I'm like, is it me? Am I?
It is. It is. Yeah.
Am I the drama?
Yeah.
But it is because that's like what my kids do. Like I'll get in and they'll be fine and they'll come up and tell me about like how Spencer bit Cassidy like 10 hours ago. And I'm like, why do I need to know about that now? And then they're crying about like, I hit my arm yesterday. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
what do you want from me? Like, go. Yeah.
Oh, I
No.
know.
Motherhood, man.
Mm.
Well, last night
Motherhood.
I could, I don't know if your husbands do this, but last night, this is my brain. I fall asleep. Kevin lays his head on the pillow and out cold.
That's
Oh,
me.
that's me.
Me,
That's
I'm
me.
Not me.
jealous. I literally
That's
laid
not
down last
normal.
night. Yeah, tell me your
I'm
secret.
so tired
Brian
by
gets
the
mad.
end of the
Brian
day.
gets mad at me so much. He's like, "How the heck do you fall asleep so quick? Like, I don't understand." I'm like, "I don't know. I don't know."
Oh my God, my
You're
brain.
exhausted.
I've
See,
asked
but
my
I'm
husband
exhausted
before-
and my brain keeps going.
Oh yeah.
Me too. I've
Me
asked my
too.
husband before because he's the same way. He literally like I asked him a while back. I was like, "Is there something that you do? Like, do you like have this mantra that you tell yourself every night when your head hits the pillow? Because it's very predictable. He will lay there for a while. He'll turn onto his side, and then I hear the snoring start, and I'm like,
Yep.
"What is going on?" And
My
I'm sitting over
husband's
there
the
like
exact same.
rocking myself, going, "Just like
Yep.
stop thinking about it. It's okay."
Yep.
Like,
Last night, my thought process while I'm hearing Kevin, I swear, started snoring within 2 minutes, and I'm like tearing up because this is my thought process was like, oh my God, one day I'm going to get old and die and I'm going to miss my kids so much. And oh my God, who's going to take care of them? And oh my God, are they going to be able to take care of them? Oh my God, I hope I
yes.
raised them enough that they'll be able to. This is my thought process that I heard over and he's snoring. I'm like, I'm going to throat punch you. I was like, what is
Not a
going
care in
on?
the world.
I was like, this is
When I-
annoying.
when I first started Instagram, I was doing a lot of letter boards, but that was back in the day before reels where letter boards were like everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And now I feel like you never see them anymore. What happened to that? But
Bring it back.
Bring it back. Yeah, bring it back,
maybe.
Katie.
Maybe. I mean, they were saying just recently that now they're going to start focusing back on photos again. I don't know. I feel like I can't keep up. But anyway,
One
one of my very
I don't have time for that. I can't take pictures of myself.
No, me neither.
I'll be taking
One of-
pictures of my house being messy.
Yeah.
They're gonna be real ugly.
That will probably be very popular though. I mean, but one of my very first letter boards was moms don't sleep. We just worry with our eyes closed. And that's it. Like I lay there and I'm like, I'm running through all of these things. And then you start running through like the really random scenarios of like, what if we were driving and like there was because I live in the Bay Area in California. One of the things that always goes over
An
my
earthquake.
mind. Yes.
Yeah.
What if I'm driving on a bridge and there's an earthquake and our car like goes into the water? Like, what do I do?
Oh my God.
Oh,
It's
God.
Or the
just
fires,
crazy.
because we've been hit by fires.
Yes.
We've been evacuated by fires. Like, you know, yeah, you do think
Right.
about all of that.
I start
Like,
thinking about house fires. I'm like, how would we get
Mhm.
out? What window would we go out? And I'm like, my husband is not worrying about that. It's like he's just
Well,
No.
and that can boil into intrusive thoughts because I know Britt, you recently shared about
Mhm.
that with postpartum anxiety, intrusive thoughts. I will never forget the first time I ever got one of those with Cassidy. And even to this day, I won't say what it is, but all I know is it involves me working out with a dumbbell, and I can't
sorry.
even,
I
I can't even like fully get like I can't say it out loud because it makes me nauseous, but I'll never forget. I'll never forget it. And I remember just thinking,
I had so many, and I had no idea it was a thing, because when I would go to my postpartum checks, it's like a 5-question questionnaire, super basic, doesn't say anything like that. I had never heard of that. And so I'm thinking I'm literally going crazy. I had heard of postpartum psychosis, and I'm like, is that what I have? I have all these thoughts in my mind that are so horrendous. Like, I was like, how could I possibly be thinking these things? And literally thought that I was like, if I said something, they're going to be like, you can't take care of your child. And I was like afraid to be alone with him, because I was like, what if I'm like one of those moms? You'd heard of this. I had that fear even while I was pregnant, before he even came. What if I'm one of those moms who snaps? Like, it was an ongoing fear of mine. And so I didn't want to speak up because I had never heard of it before. And it's like, thank God now people are talking more about it. And I know now, like, oh, okay, this has a name. This is a thing. It is different than postpartum psychosis. It does not mean you're going to act on these thoughts. Like, it was very scary though. And like, I wish that there was more information out there when I went through it.
Well, and the girl that I had on as a guest this morning, because the same one that was in the article with you, Emily, she recently, it's at 2.8 million. And we were talking about it because she did a TikTok, and I think it's also a reel about intrusive thoughts. And so she said, common intrusive thoughts as a new mom. And she just went through the list. So what if I threw the baby over the balcony? I should just leave the car seat. I should just leave the car seat unbuckled. What if I hit the baby's head on this corner? What if I held the baby too long underwater? The baby would be better off without me. Am I having sexual thoughts about the baby? What if I stab the baby with this kitchen knife? Should I leave the baby alone in the car overnight? Like, and she said it wasn't her thoughts. She's a therapist. So she just took the ones that she's been hearing. And the people that like it did so well. And the reason why she was involved in the article was because she voiced what so many people are thinking. And she said, but the bullying that has come in on this is they're like, I'm going to report you to CPS, and I'm going to whatever. And she said, what kills me, and she was telling me this morning, she said, what kills me is like, that shit I don't care about, because I'm not saying this through the lens of me. She said, so go ahead, have fun. But she said, what troubles me is like, I'm so glad that moms are seeing this and they're like, oh, thank God. Like, I'm not going nuts. But she said, but then there are moms that are coming through and saying, I'm going to call CPS on you, where they're like, I'm not going nuts, but if I say it.
Right.
I think what people need to understand, and I think that I hope that more therapists, more psychologists start speaking out on this, is that these intrusive thoughts, the mom anxiety and everything else that surrounds postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, postpartum psychosis, all of this, it doesn't stem from you actually wanting to hurt your children. It stems from something else. It stems from stress, feeling lack of support. It stems from, anxiety that then postpartum anxiety takes its hold, and it doesn't, like, the moms don't want to actually harm their children. Like, Mary, you didn't want to break the window. You just did because you snapped, and it was a snap reaction, and bad things happen. And I think that it's so easy to like demonize moms who do struggle with their mental health, that there's something wrong with them, and that they're not, they're unfit mothers. And it's just that they're not receiving the adequate mental health support to help them process all this new stuff that comes along with being a mom, or being a mom of 2, or being a mom of 3. And like, it keeps going down the chain with each and every kid that you add to the mix.
Yeah. Well, and I know with like, so intrusive thoughts, is I actually, after I had Cassidy and that first one ever popped in, I remember doing like actual research on it, and I was so relieved when I found out. So a lot of it's obviously protection. So you're mom bear. So you have to, it's fight or flight type of thing. It's our anxiety to weighing out the risk. So you're trying to figure out the risk analysis essentially on anything. So you're trying to best prepare yourself, and our brain is in hyperdrive to best protect our kids. So in a situation, like if an earthquake happens on a bridge, like what happens if I trip and fall down the stairs? How am I going to protect the baby? What happens if so-and-so happens, that type of thing. Another one is postpartum OCD, which is with anxiety. So
Intrusive thoughts too.
Yeah. And that goes with intrusive thoughts, because it's like, what if I this is terrible. What if I stabbed the baby with a fork? Then what would happen? The baby would cry. Then the baby would bleed. Then the baby would do whatever. And it sounds so messed up because we're not trying to do it. It's your brain trying to organize the actions. And that's the OCD portion of it, in order to best figure out how you would react. Essentially,
how you would deal with
It's like
a
preparing
terrible
yourself.
situation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a protection thing, and it's in way hyperdrive and whatever. It's just, it kind of relieved me when I found that. And what I do now, like, I know with intrusive thoughts, whenever they come in, I always take a second, because they make me freaking nauseous. Like, I get sick to my stomach when they happen, and I have to stop. And I'm just like, okay, thank you. Like, thank you for protecting me, but up and get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let it pass.
Yeah. You just have to, like, tell yourself it's just a thought. I'm not going to do it.
Exactly.
And it's not, it's there as a warning, not because I actually want to do it. And then you just move on. But
that's what I didn't know when it was happening. So it's like, I would focus on them, and it was just, I was so distressed all day long. It was like, it consumed me, and I had so much anxiety about it because I didn't know this was just a thought. I was like, what's wrong with me? But then once I finally researched it, I learned, like, if these thoughts are distressing to you, then it's an intrusive thought. Like, it doesn't mean you're going to act. It's literally just a thought, and you have to learn to, like any other thought, let them pass. And I realized I actually have had them my whole life. Like, I've had ones where it's like, oh, I'm driving. What if I swerve my car into the, other
into a person
lane?
that's
And it's
walking,
like,
or like if you see someone driving, you're like, what if I just run them over? Like, it's so fucked up, but
sounds
you
so
think
horrible,
about
but it's like, it goes through your mind.
Yeah.
And I realized that I had those before I ever was
Oh,
postpartum,
yeah.
but then something about the hormones or whatever, like, made them go into hyperdrive. And of
think
course,
it
when
just
it's your child in
intensifies
it,
it, too.
it's like way worse.
Well, and I think a big portion,
Yeah.
I remember I had a friend in college who dealt with that. She was like freaking out because she's like, something's wrong with me. And we were like open enough to talk about it. I was like, I remember just laughing about it, because I was like, it's not wrong. I was like, and I remember just being like, it's not a big deal. It's like, because you know that life can change. Like, I remember having those and being like, because you can literally change your life like that in a second. Like, literally, I could go downstairs and go create a hell for my world, and I could change that type of thing. And it's terrifying when you think about it, but you're like, I think that's why these thoughts also occur, because we, as moms, we know that, like, we know that our lives hang on a thread sometimes. Like, we feel that. And it's just, especially with our kids, like, people say it all the time, it's your heart walking around outside your body. Like, it literally is. So it's only natural to kind of picture every worst case scenario in order to make sure that crap doesn't happen. But
I just wish that when we've been talking about, when we went to, I know, the pediatrician, like, you get the postpartum depression screening questionnaire thing. I wish that, and I hope that it does happen eventually. Maybe the more that this is being talked about, the more that it will become a thing. I wish that there would be like a checklist for postpartum anxiety and like intrusive thoughts, showing examples of like what that sounds like. Because I think, I don't know about, I think I can assume for all of us that, like, when we hear that other people are going through the same thing as us, it's very comforting. And I feel like when you don't know that somebody else is feeling the same way or having those thoughts, it's scarier. And you feel like, right, what is wrong with me? But if I saw a questionnaire that was like, here's all the things for postpartum depression, here's for postpartum anxiety, postpartum psychosis, like, here's an example of what that sounds like or what it might feel like, I feel like that would be so helpful. That would be, that would make me feel like, oh, okay, so maybe I'm feeling like this, and that other women experience this. This is comforting. It's like weird to be comforted that other people are experiencing like things like that, but it is comforting to know that you're not alone. I mean, so I feel like hope.
I think it's amazing how far, just in general, mental health has come. And here's a small story. My mom was severely depressed, and it was like 14 years ago, and in 14 years, mental health postpartum has changed dramatically. And I'll give you this example. My mom was very depressed, and when she was laying in bed, I'd be like, what are you doing? Get up. Like, you have kids. I mean, you can't just lay there. And it makes me sad now because I've learned so much. So back then, it wasn't common to talk about like your feelings or how stressed out or how, sad and depressed you were. And, I didn't know. I was also very young, and I was just like, get up, mom. Why are you like this? And she used medication as a form of relief, and
Mhm.
ended up passing away by an accidental overdose. But I wished that I had been more supportive for her at the time, because now that I've gotten older, I've had kids, I've had postpartum, and I've gone to therapy multiple times. I mean, my 6-year-old goes to therapy. I'm so big on therapy that, just trying to help people know that they're not alone. And
Mhm.
just the fact that it's changed so much. I like seeing it and I like hearing about it, because I want to make a difference for moms, dads, kids, so that they don't feel alone, especially like the intrusive thoughts that you were saying. Like, I never even thought of it that way until you said it. Like, I knew it happens, but I didn't know the actual word for it, right?
Yeah.
And that happens to me all the time. I am constantly thinking, like, if this happens, okay, this is how I'll fix it. That's why I watch like murder movies, because
Yeah.
in case
Yeah,
something
I think that's
happens.
why so many moms are like watching these like murder shows or like these
Yeah,
mystery
I
shows.
had to
I think
stop.
so many
Yeah,
of us watch
I can't do
those,
it.
and
Yeah.
it's fascinating to watch. And I think that it makes sense. I think it's
preps you, like, just in case, and I was talking
yeah.
to my therapist about it, and she's like, why do you watch those? I'm like, maybe it's because if I was ever in the situation, I would know how to take care of it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No.
Well, and Jessica, you talking about your mom. So like, cause I had a friend growing up, and I remember her mom was always depressed, but you almost thought she was lazy. That's all we had thought was like lazy, because
Exactly.
she was always in bed, and she was like, oh, she just doesn't, like, she's just lazy type of thing. And that's all you thought. But I want to hear from you guys. Like, do you feel like it's definitely a generational thing on my end? Like my parents and stuff, like talking about therapy and things like that with them, and feelings even have just always been like, leave that
Mhm.
for another day type of thing. Do you guys feel that way? Do you feel like your parents are like,
I think it's generationally,
Yeah.
generation wise, as well as for me, having Hispanic background, like, you just suck it up, deal with
Yeah,
it. Like,
different
don't even
cultures
talk
for
about it,
sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but now, like, I don't want to have that. My mom wasn't totally like that, but my grandparents were,
Yeah.
and they helped raise me to a certain extent. And so I knew that's not how I wanted to be. And so I'm trying differently with my kids. But I know that even my partner's mom, she'd be like, okay, why does he need this? Like, why are you talking to him? Like,
Yeah.
just suck it up,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think
I think
even
that's
in my family, you want to go ahead?
no. I want to hear from you.
Um, in my family, there was always like this, like you said, like not talking a ton about our feelings. And I know there's people in my family that have struggled with mental health, but it's not open.
Mhm.
Like I know that it's there. And I've always been somebody that I just take matters into my own hands. I was like 19 and I told my parents I needed to go to a therapist. And they were like, what? And I was like, yep, I want to go to therapy. I just broke up with my boyfriend and I need a therapist.
Yeah.
And I did. And I went to a therapist for almost a year. And it was one of the best things I've ever done. And I was the same way going into my second postpartum. Same with the first. I really didn't have any postpartum issues. And then I had my second, and I had a 2.5-year-old at home, a newborn, and it was so hard. I had rage, I had anxiety, and I went into my doctor and I don't know if this is a difference, but I saw a group of midwives and I do feel like I was supported a little bit more.
Mhm.
Because I literally was telling her this and she looked at me and she goes, you have rage. And I was like, yeah, I don't like that word, but yeah.
Yeah.
It just sounds, so when I say that, I just feel like it sounds like I'm a complete like psychopath. But she said, you have rage and it's okay. She's like, I have rage. And she went on to tell me a whole story on how she did. And I went in there knowing that I was going to ask for help because I knew that something was not right.
Yeah.
And that's not easy for a lot of people to do. I know that it's not. And I kind of had to force myself because feelings were not always talked about in my family. So I feel like I had to push myself, even with my husband. My husband's not a big feelings guy. I know a lot of men are not.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that's really hard. Just trying to like explain why I'm feeling a certain way and like what I need from that
Yeah.
to navigate that as a mom and being a stay-at-home mom and what I need help with there too.
Yeah.
It's definitely, I think that it's, I can't remember who said it earlier, but I think it does bring me a little bit of comfort that I'm sensing a slight shift that generationally, if we look back, 20 years, mental health wasn't even like a thing. Celebrities weren't talking about their mental health. And I think that now that you're hearing it just in the general population, celebrities, famous people are struggling with their mental health, it's becoming more accepted. And so in general, I think mental health is at a different place than it was, 20 years ago, and hopefully it's even further 20 years from now.
Yeah.
But I think mental health also has a separate little component of maternal mental health, and hopefully that continues, and that becomes a sort of a similar talking point, but a separate talking point, because as moms who struggle with mental health, I think that it's its own monster, separate from maybe a non-parent or somebody who has much older kids struggling with their mental health, or a young person, or whatever it might be.
But is it possible? Sorry,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I wonder if it's and this is just a thought, like, is it possible if your postpartum wasn't taken care of and you already have mental health issues, in the long run, it's still going to be there, and you could still, I don't know if that's right, potentially still have postpartum? Like, I don't know, because if not you, in general, if we don't get the help we need and then we just kind of let it ride, it'll come back eventually.
It sort of rears its ugly head.
Well, that's what it actually, when I did research on like postpartum depression, a lot of people don't realize that they've had depression tendencies, or they've experienced mental health, because a lot of people just aren't aware of it until postpartum. And postpartum is when it actually brings to light that, oh, I actually have dealt with this all my life. It's just come out in different ways. And that was the case for me. Like, postpartum anxiety, especially the third time around, has really hit hard, and dissociating is a really hard thing that happens to me sometimes, where I literally feel like I am not connected to my body. Probably what I felt yesterday morning. It was just like, I'm completely not even there. And it's very frustrating.
It's a weird feeling too. I've had that. Yeah.
It is. It's like, you're either floating. For me, it either feels like my feet are literally like I'm levitating off the floor, or I'm moving really fast. And
it's like your body vibrates.
Yeah, I'm jittery. Like I'm inside, I'm buzzing, internally buzzing. But I used to do that when I was a kid, and I didn't ever recognize it until I could actually like tangibly put something on it. But I remember being a kid in my bedroom, and I don't know why, I can't remember like what would have sparked it, but I remember having like anxiety moments of being like, I'm moving really fast. I remember not being able to like fully get, I couldn't like get my shit together, essentially, like it couldn't come together. And I remember going downstairs to my mom and like asking her to scratch my back, because and sit next to her, and I remember crying because I couldn't stop it, and I couldn't whatever. And I couldn't even tangibly like say what was happening to me. But now looking back, and I'm like, oh, I was probably having a panic attack. Like I probably just didn't know what that was. And so I just thought it was like a weird thing that was going on, but it escalated this time, now being a mom, and it only just comes out where it's like, oh, I've had this all my life. It's just 10 times worse now. Like,
that's interesting you say that, because my second boy says that he said that to me before. He's like, Mom, everything's moving fast. And I'm like, what do you mean? So
it probably exists. Anxiety is like a really weird thing. And I even like this morning, I've been dealing with anxiety a lot recently, and it's just it's something now that's not even. And Kevin this morning was like, well, what are you worried about? And I said, nothing. I said, I'm literally not worried about anything. And I said, and it's very hard to explain when you don't understand. I said, it's just a physical thing that's going on with me. And I can't, like, it's like, I almost need to feel like I need to put my glasses on, like, cause I feel like I can't even focus on something that's ahead of me. And I'm like, I just have like a constant pit in my stomach, and it's just like, I'm constantly having this going on. And it's like, it's a very frustrating feeling. And it's just like, it makes you snap at everyone. And that's probably why I lost my shit yesterday. Like,
well, and get super overstimulated. I feel like if I'm like already, because this postpartum has been very, very anxious and very physically like feeling things I never have felt before. And I feel like when it feels like it's very intense, that's when I feel like I get very overstimulated and feel that vibrating, where everything's like shaking. And I can't take too many noises from everybody. Like everyone just needs to stop. Like it almost feels like you are, like you said, like floating, or like you can see what's happening. Like you can picture what is about to unfold before your eyes. Like just, I can't stop it. It's like a freight train.
It's like it's an internal pressure. It's like a pressure cooker. That's what you feel like. But so I dealt with that as a kid. And again, like not knowing and not recognizing that. I went to a therapist when I was a kid. I dealt with self-harm. I used to cut myself when I was a kid. And it wasn't to be, because at the time when you were a kid in our age, like, because we're all very similar in age, it was kind of like an emo thing to do. And it wasn't because of that. I was doing it secretly. I was doing it on my thighs and my hips. And I have like other marks. I have permanent scars now, which is so lovely from it. But I did it because it was a connecting, because when you would disassociate, it was a way for me to actually feel something and know that it's like my grounding technique, essentially, to know that I was still present in the moment of knowing that, like, oh, it hurts, I'm actually here, like, type of thing. And it sounds terrible, but now, like, recognizing it, you're like, oh, like, that's what I was feeling all those years ago. And it makes so much sense. But again, now I'm a mom now, and I have everyone else on my shoulders, so it's just like 10 times worse. And it's
Jordan,
again,
the overstimulation is something that I think every stay-at-home mom can identify with. It's so crazy to me. So before becoming a stay-at-home mom, I was a pediatric occupational therapist, and I worked with kids with sensory needs. And I can't tell you how many kids I worked with over the years who had sensory overload, and they would just get totally overwhelmed with sensory input, whether it be auditory or tactile input or whatever it might be. And I've recognized it in kids for years. For years, I used to treat kids with this. And only I feel like it steadily got, I would get more. I didn't really feel it with our first. I got it a little bit more with our second, but it was after our third. And I feel like the overstimulation in the last year and a half has just been through the roof. And it's mostly, like you said, it's the auditory stuff. And like moms talking about being touched out. That's something my mom recently, she's on Instagram, and so she sees like what a lot of moms are posting and stuff. And she recently said to me, like, I never even, what is this term, touched out? And I was explaining it to her, and I was like, I think there's so much more talked about these days than we used to talk about, or than our moms and their moms used to talk about. But I'm sure they felt it. There just wasn't like a term for it, and there wasn't as many people talking about it. And so it was more this.
And there wasn't social media.
Right. And so many moms, at the end of the day, it's not that you can't stand the fighting and the whining. I mean, that definitely goes with it. But at the end of the day, you've heard so much mommy, and the fighting in the background, and the whining and the crying, and the it's like something as innocent as like the microwave going off is just like, shut up. Or just the dog. Like, I've seen so many moms
the dog
hearing like the dog licking themselves is just like, knock it off. Like it's innocent little noises that by the end of the day, your threshold is like up to here. You're just like, enough is enough. I can't stand somebody even like laughing in the background, just like, enough, everybody just be quiet. And then last thing you need is somebody to like come and talk, like touch you.
Well, pro tip, if you guys, because you guys all have little kids, you remember the show Little Bear? From
love Little Bear.
Paramount Plus has it. Put that shit on. It is wonderful. Now I know why my mom let me watch it so often. It is so relaxing.
It's like vaguely ringing a bell. It's so Little Bear.
Little Bear. It is so cute. The illustrations are so cute, but it's so, because the background of it is just like classical music. Essentially, it's like piano. It's like pretty piano. It sounds like you know the soundtrack from Pride and Prejudice, if you ever seen that movie, like the pretty piano, that's what it sounds like. And it's just like the little bear and their quiet little voices. And your kids probably will get bored of it because they're so used to like Coco Melon and like every 5 seconds, it's just switching to a new scene and noises. But my kids actually like it, but it's actually relaxing. And I'm like, oh, I can watch this forever. So
or like I've been lately doing a lot of like earplugs or having my Emily headphones in, and it's just enough is enough at the end of the day. And so when you add the overstimulation to all of this other stuff, and then the mental health and the stress, and it's just moms everywhere are struggling in one way or another. Moms are struggling.
Right.
And then you add in like everything of social media that's like, oh, this is harming your kid, and this is harming your kid, and this is harming your kid. And it's like you're
Don't
juggling
yell at
that
your
mental
children.
load on top of like your normal motherly concerns that gets thrown in, and it's just like so much.
Yeah,
Are your
it's
kids
inevitable that
parenting
after
enough?
it's inevitable after you have like a bad, quote unquote, bad parenting moment, like where you're feeling like, oh God, I did something and I probably shouldn't have said that, or I probably shouldn't have done that. That then you log on to social media and it's like, here's why you shouldn't say no to your child. And I'm like, oh shit.
Here's why you shouldn't raise your voice. Okay.
Yes, I'll let my kid just punch his brother in the face. Let's do it.
Great.
Well, it's everything's telling us that we're going to traumatize our kids. And I'm like,
oh,
my
that's
God.
like I know. And then I think
Or why we
because
don't.
of that. So go ahead.
No, go.
I was just going to say, then I know, Emily, we talk about this, but like, I feel like when you see that, then you just like feel like you put this added pressure on yourself that you shouldn't even put on yourself, because at the end of the day, we're all just trying. I know, Mary, you've said this so many times and I love it. It's like, this is a job we've never had before, and we are learning how to do it as we go. And we need to give ourselves grace because we are figuring this out.
Well, I always say it's the one job that like we don't know until we're step foot in it. But to be honest, like it's the one job that I don't want to get perfect anymore. Like I'm not, I'm done trying to even make it perfect, because at the end of the day, like imagine this, if we all were doing it exceptionally well, one, there's no marker for perfect. So I don't know what that would even be, because Brittany's perfect is going to be different than Jessica's, and Jessica's going to be different than Jordan's, and Emily's versus Katie's and mine. It's all different what we're seeing. So if we were to achieve whatever that perfect is, what good would our kids learn? Like, what are they going to see? And by the time that they get older, like, I want them to know, like, I want to know that, like, I am perfect for my kids. I am the perfect mom for my kids because I am their mom, but I am not perfect, and I don't need them putting me on a pedestal. So I don't want that. Like, I don't want my kids to grow up and be like, my mom never had a bad moment. And like, I don't want them to do that. If my kids get to that point of us getting older, I've failed, because that's what I consider failure at this point. I want my kids to know, like, my mom also had it hard too, but this is what she did to make it better. That's what I want
them to know for their kids one day, hopefully.
They need to know, like, they need to know that
they're a better parent than I was, you know what I mean? And so
exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's one area where our generation's done a lot better, is like apologizing to our kids for our mistakes, where it's like, hey, I lost my shit on you. I'm really sorry I did that. Like, my parents were wonderful. I had great parents, but I don't remember there being a time where they were like, I'm so sorry I yelled. Like, I'm so sorry that this happened. I'm so sorry you felt this way. Like, and I try to do that with my kids all the time, where it's like, yeah, I'm not perfect. I'm a yeller sometimes. Like, I'm working on it. I'm sorry. Like,
and a cusser over here.
You know,
I'm all of the above.
I literally the other day,
but we're not too perfect to like tell our kids we made a mistake. And I think that's really great.
I think that there's definitely been that shift. And I think that it makes me feel so good for our kids' generation that I think we're the perfectionist generation. Our generation, we grew up wanting to be perfect and wanting to do everything right, because we learned that when we did things right, we got praised. And when we did things wrong, we got in trouble and all these things. And so it was like there's so many of us that have shared that we have this fear to get things wrong, which then you become a parent and you get so many things wrong. And because, like Mary, you said, nobody's perfect. There's no such thing. And it's so true. And so I think, how refreshing is it for our kids to be able to grow up in a world where they don't have to be perfect. They don't have to have this pressure on them to be perfect. And then therefore they don't have this internal pressure on themselves to be the perfect parent, to be the perfect mom. It's so funny you said that, Mary, because I was just thinking the other day, I cannot wait. I hope I'm around to watch our girls become moms, because I want to be able to share with them my struggle as a mom, because I know that they're going to struggle. There's no way it's going to be easy for them. It's never been easy. It's never going to be easy. And so I look forward to the days where I can sit them down and be like, I know you're struggling right now. I can see it, and it's okay, because I struggled too, and you're not doing anything wrong. It's just welcome to motherhood, like welcome to the circus, you know?
And to be there to help them and support them in ways that we know what would and do, you know, that my own mom does now, just
Yeah.
being able to do those things.
Well,
for
and
them.
that's a big thing that I've heard from a lot of people that have messaged me saying like, they don't have the support system of their parents. And it's because it's more of like passing the torch type of thing. This idea of passing the torch where it's like, now it's your turn. Good luck. And I'm like, I don't want that. Like, I mean, I don't want my kids to like come. I want to break when I become a grandparent, but I also just, I hope to be able to help them. And if I have a daughter-in-law or whatever, I'm going to hopefully step in and offer as much as I possibly can. And if they're happy that way, if my daughter-in-law and my daughters are happy, then their kids are going to be happy. And that's just like what people are forgetting. But
Yeah.
it's, I think it's going to be good. That's why I do all this. Like, that's why I think that's why we all overwhelmingly do this. And I say that, like, I get on Instagram for me. I do this podcast for me because it does bring me joy and it gives me an excuse to get on here and talk to adult human beings and not, whatever. But overwhelmingly, I want this to be better. I hope, and I said that this morning, I was like, I really hope that today is the peak of the hardship of motherhood. I hope today is the hardest it's ever going to get. And slowly each and every day, it's going to get a little bit easier, whatever way it might be. And it's only going to do that if we keep pushing for it too.
Talking about it.
And keep
just
talking
keep
about
talking
it.
about it.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like we have to fix ourselves while we're fixing everybody else.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well,
And that's how I feel.
Even if we're, in a better place, still talking about the times when it was hard,
Yeah.
because there's continuously going to be new moms. And if we're still sharing on social media, we need to continue to support them as well.
Yeah.
Letting them know that it's okay to struggle and to share those struggles too.
Yeah.
There's always new moms being born, for lack of a better
Yes.
word. And there's
Right.
also so many moms out there who are not following like mom bloggers like us.
Yep.
And I every once in a while I'll get a message from somebody being like, I've just recently found you and I can't believe that like you're sharing about this. And like they're all just following their friends and family. And so then they stumble upon people like us and they're like, oh my God, this is part of this conversation. And as much as I'm sure as far as our reach goes between the six of us, I think that there's millions of moms that we're not reaching. That I think would be happy to stumble upon moms who are talking about these things, because everybody deals with it from one degree to another, some moms struggle more, some moms struggle less, but somebody,
no matter what, motherhood is hard.
Well,
Amen.
and people are comparing. I think the comparison game is there, but a lot of people are now comparing their struggles where they're like, well, I'm a stay-at-home mom and I see a working mom and I can't complain, or a working mom can't complain. And I'm like, well, no, we can have parallel struggles. Yeah. Well, there's parallel struggles. Like what might be easy for me might be really hard for you. What might be really hard for you might be really like, or vice versa.
It's all relative.
It's all, it doesn't matter.
It's all relative.
If it's hard for you, it's hard for you. And that's what we're getting caught up in, and being like,
I've had moms tell me like, well, it's so hard with one. And they're like, but you have four. I can't complain. And I was like, it's okay. Your one might be really hard. It's all, it's all relative.
Yes.
Your struggle, it might be really hard for you. And that's fine.
I get those messages all the time. And I'm like, no, you have to know that like when I had one, it was really hard too. It was hard for me. Right now, one sounds easy because it's relative to three. It's easier for me. But back in the day when I had one, I remember thinking, oh my God, how do people have more than one child?
I know.
Exactly. Yeah. I just keep on having them so they can play with each other. Just kidding.
And then
No more parenting.
Don't say that, because people will come and fight you for that. I mean,
I say that all the time.
Oh my gosh.
No, I said that to Spencer the other day because Spencer came up. He's like, "Mommy, come play." I was like, "No." I was like, "I'm trying to do something." That's why I said, "I had Cassidy. You have Cassidy. Go find her." And he was like, "I don't want to." And I was like, "Come on."
I made a reel on that one time, and somebody came after me. I was like, "Wait a minute."
Wait, so we didn't have kids so they could do the chores?
Well, because there's people out there that think that you have to literally like surround your child at all times and play with them at every freaking second. I've covered that before too. It was like, I don't like to play with my kids. I won't.
And that's okay.
I don't want to.
And I think, and I think that's too, I'm hoping that where we're at in us as moms and in a society is what we're trying to work towards, is supporting and being open and honest about mental health and maternal mental health specifically. But what we all just really want is someone who just isn't going to judge you, who's not going to make you feel bad for
Absolutely.
feeling a certain way. And I think that's what I love about, especially obviously, you know, you guys, I've seen what you share and what you talk about, and you never come across as judging or making someone feel bad about feeling a certain way. It's almost like, you know, I know the term normalizing is being thrown around a lot, but like, let's just all just know that everybody's struggles are different. It's going to look different. It's going to feel different for other people. And to know that if someone speaks up, to not feel judged is, I think when I had done a reel about like a mom friend and like what you would want, and I cannot tell you how many comments were, I just want someone to just not judge me for when I'm sharing that I'm struggling. And I think that's something I'm hoping, as we are going through this and learning ourselves, that will become a normal thing. Like, listen, we're moms, you know, it's okay. Like,
we're
it's
all
okay.
We are all different. We all parent differently. We're all different personalities. And so of course we're not all going to be the same person. And of course we're going to raise our kids differently, but that doesn't mean that we have to judge everybody for being different than us and push our feelings on other people. Obviously, if somebody wants to know that, you know, I love sharing my experiences to help other people. You know, that's a good thing to do, to share your stories. But, you know, at the end of the day, we're our own mom, our own person, and we're raising our kids the best that we feel we need to do.
Yeah.
I appreciate the different perspectives too, though. Like, you know, someone does something way different than I do, and I'm like, okay, maybe I wouldn't do that, but it's good to know, you know. My kid's 6 and he was begging me for a Switch because his older brother has one, a Nintendo Switch. And I was like, he's like, come on, mom, please, my friend who's 6 has one. And I was like, you know what? That's good for your friend. And that's maybe what they do in their home. But right now, we're not going to have one just yet. Like, it's not a bad thing. He's like, is that bad? I'm like, no, not bad at all. Like, everyone's different.
Yeah.
You know,
it's our preferences, and it's not a bad thing. It's just different. And that's, I did a podcast episode on that. And I actually had people on my stories and said, what's a good mom and what's a bad mom?
Yes.
And good mom, at the end of the day, overwhelmingly, what's a good mom? It's a mom that shows up.
Yeah.
That's it. A bad mom is, and bad mom for answers with that was very specific. It was like very personal projection. So just anyone that calls it, it's always a projection. So it was like a mom that does drugs, a mom that skipped out on a recital. Like it was very like personal, where you could tell it boiled down to personal experiences.
They're talking about their experience.
Of what, you know, they rated someone to be. And it was like a mom that doesn't do her research, a mom that doesn't buckle her child into the car seat the right way, a mom that, it just went through the list. But overwhelmingly also what came through, which I think all of us can agree on, is a mom that knows what's best for her kid and doesn't give a shit and purposely neglects their kid. Like that's purposely neglecting or abusing. That we can all agree on. That's not good. But no one is aiming to do that. Like no majority of us are not aiming to do that. We are just trying to keep our sanity. And I personally, I think sanity trumps everything else.
Yeah.
I think the mental health.
There's a quote.
Yeah.
No, go ahead and finish.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, there's a quote that I really love that always gets me through the bad days. That's bad moms don't worry about being bad moms.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I get messages from moms a bunch that will say, I'm worried I'm messing them up. I'm worried that I'm a bad mom and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, just the sheer fact that you're thinking about that. I know that you're not a bad mom because you actually care. You're worried that like, am I doing this right? And I'm like, if you're wondering if you're doing it right, you're doing it right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, like our kids, again, they're humans. They're going to grow up and they're going to make their own choices and they're going to have their own thoughts and feelings. And it's not always going to be a direct reflection on us. And I think that's a big thing that us moms worry about too. It's just like, we internalize everything. So when the time comes and our kids, if they grow up, I can't control what they like. And if one of those things that they don't like is me, then I love you.
Fine.
Bye. I did what I could, but it's like, you know, we can't take everything that we've done and, you know, internalize that either. I think moms put a lot of pressure on ourselves for that. Like we do our best. And
I think the other hidden thing that a lot of moms compare themselves to who they see online, or the neighbor next door, or the mom at pickup who has herself all put together, and you roll up and you're like, you know, 5-day-old, not washed hair and sweats. I think there's this invisible thing of what kind of support each mom has, whether that be in a partner, in-laws, babysitter, a live-in nanny, whatever it might be. Everybody has a different support system, and some moms are more supported than others. There are single moms doing it all by themselves versus moms who have, you know, a live-in nanny and a partner that's there and in-laws that help. And I think it's so hard to not compare ourselves, but to try not to compare yourself to a mom who you don't know what her support system might look like, and to not be too hard on yourself, because you know, you might not have as many supports as that other mom who looks so much more put together. It's not that she's a better mom or she spends her time more wisely and maybe doesn't watch as much Bravo. That's me. I'm the Bravo mom.
I love Bravo.
But you know, I think it's so easy for ourselves. You know, we look at other moms, we're like, oh, she looks like she has it together way more than I do. But it might be that she has more support than you do, and
or it's
more
the
thinly
masking,
spread,
or it's masking,
or masking it, exactly.
Which is like what I love to do. That's personally like what I like to do. I get myself together pretty much daily. Like I think you guys pretty much know, like I get myself dressed in clothes and makeup on pretty much daily. It's because if I don't,
but it makes you feel good.
It makes me feel good. It's as much, it's like a masking that actually usually does the trick for me. It works, but it's still there. And like I said, I have an Instagram story where I just started crying as I'm putting on makeup. And I said, I'm going to do it because my kids don't deserve me like this. And I was just bawling my eyes out because I'm like, I have to keep going. Like and it sucks. Like, and not everyone, it's a priority for me. It's just one of those things, but I've missed Rachel in my back pocket. That's why she's I plug my
Rachel.
And it's not because I'm doing, and it's not because I'm waking up. I'm just skipping out on every other priority thing that I put.
Don't watch too much Miss Rachel, Mary. Otherwise, she's gonna creep in during the
dude
at night.
I'm gonna have
oh my god.
I'm gonna have to do it. I have to do a part 2. I was listening to one, and she was like, the fire hose one. I actually wrote down some. Hold on.
You should do one. You should do one too, where it's like you're talking to other moms too, where you're like at like a mom like lunch date and you're talking to another adult like that. You're like, yay!
It was one where she's like, it was like, take out your fire hose, and it was like, squirt the water was another one. Squirt the water, and then it was like, wiggle your fingers, and I was like, oh sweet Jesus Mary. And then the other one was like, open wide your little mouth.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, no, god damn it. I was like,
your
stop
mind
it
out of the gutter.
No, now I can't listen to it. But now I'm on like a tangent of like watching her where I'm like, what can I pull from this?
What can I
so dirty. But but I also don't want to do it too much, because then it's going to just take away from like what I'm actually trying to do on Instagram.
Well, also,
like, oh,
you don't want to ruin Miss Rachel for all the
I was gonna say Miss Rachel's gonna come after you.
I know. Someone was like, she's gonna block you, and I'm like, no, she won't. She probably will, but it's fine.
I made a dirty reel about Blippi and he liked it, so it's okay. She'll probably like it.
I have a feeling she'll see it at some point. She'll probably just like, she's a mom too. She's got to be thinking these things. But
she herself made a reel recently where she wasn't it with Elise Myers.
Yeah,
where she was sitting across the table and she's like, we're gonna put it in, and Elise was like, what? Like,
yeah, you can turn it off. Yeah. I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me for this. I think this is like I think this was a much needed thing. And again, 6 voices is much more powerful than one, and that's why I wanted to do this, and hopefully we can do more.
Thank you,
yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Of course. And for everyone listening, I'm going to link everyone's profiles in the show notes for the description, wherever you're listening. You can check them all out. And if you're seeing this on Instagram, you can find them there, because I'll put them in the caption of the post and everything. But these are moms worth following. These are real moms. Everyone's here is a real mom. Like, it doesn't matter their follower count, doesn't matter anything. It's real moms that are showing up to share their truth of whatever it is, their life. And if you're looking for your safe spot to be in, one of them is it. All of them are it. These are your safe spots to go.
We got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
thanks, Mary.
of course, you
Thank
guys
you,
are
Mary.
the best.